Chapter 2, Story Time. In this chapter, we will take a look at some powerful examples of how impactful beliefs can be. We'll try to get it done as quickly as possible. Beliefs play a significant role in shaping our physiology and our health. And the first thing that we will discuss is something that you've heard of before. It's the placebo effect. An example of that is when patients get better by ingesting a sugar pill, for example. So they think they're getting the medicine. They think they're getting the medicine when in reality they're not, and they still get better. And this is defined as the placebo effect, and medical history is filled with cases where placebos were found to have an effect on a variety of disorders. One example, and one truly powerful example, is the example of knee surgery. So there's a doctor called Dr. Mosley, and he wanted to figure out which part of the surgery was giving his patients relief. And he performed surgeries for debilitating knee pain. So he divided his patients in a study in 3 groups. The first 2 groups had standard treatments for arthritic knees. In the one, he shaved the damaged cartilage, and in the other group, he flushed out the knee joint. And the third group actually got fake surgery. So the patient was sedated, and doctor made the standard incisions just as he would during a real surgery. And after 40 minutes, Dr. Mosley sewed up the incisions as if he had performed the surgery. And all 3 groups got the same post-operative care, which included an exercise program. So as expected, the first 2 groups that received the actual surgery improved, but the placebo effect group, or the placebo group, improved just as much as the other 2 groups. And there was actually a television news program that captured the footage regarding this study, and the footage showed members of the placebo group walking and playing basketball, in short, doing things that they reported they could not do before their surgery. And the placebo patients didn't find out for 2 years that they had gotten fake surgery. And one member of the placebo group, Team Perez, he had to walk with a cane before the surgery, is now able to play basketball with his grandkids. And this is what he said: "In this world, anything is possible when you put your mind to it. I know that your mind can work miracles." There are many more cases, documented cases of the placebo effect. The example that we will take a look at now is in treatment of depression. So there are many studies that show that the placebo effect is very powerful when it comes to treating depression. Also for a multitude of other diseases, including asthmas, Parkinson's, and so on. And we have a couple of examples of that. We have a psychiatrist, Walter Brown, of the Brown University School of Medicine, and he proposed that placebo pills should be the first treatment for patients with mild or moderate depression. There is a report from the United States Department of Health and Human Services that found that 50% of severely depressed patients taking drugs improve versus 32% that improve by taking a placebo, which is not that much of a difference. And in a 2002 article in the American Psychological Association's Prevention and Treatment, which is called The Emperor's New Drug, the Professor Irving Kirsch found that 80% of the effect of antidepressants as measured in clinical trials could be attributed to the placebo effect. This was done in 2002. And Kurs actually had to invoke the Freedom of Information Act in 2001 to get information on the clinical trials of the top antidepressants, because usually such data is not forthcoming. And the data show that in more than half of the clinical trials for the 6 leading antidepressants, the drugs did not outperform placebo or just regular sugar pills. which is scary when you kind of think about it. And there is a specific example of the California interior designer Janis Schoenfeld. So she took a part in a clinical trial to test the efficacy of an antidepressant Effexor in 1997, and she was stunned when she found out that she had been on a placebo, on the sugar pills. And not only did the sugar pills relieve her of depression that plagued her for 30 years, the brain scans she received throughout the study found that the activity of her prefrontal cortex was greatly enhanced. That actually means that when the mind and the beliefs change, that it absolutely affects your biology. And she even experienced nausea, a common side effect of drugs, just by believing that she was taking drugs. Just as the placebo effect exists, there's also the opposite of the placebo. It's called the nocebo effect. In short, if positive thinking can pull you out of depression and heal a damaged knee, then consider what negative thinking can do in your life. And the nocebo effect is associated with negative, life-threatening or disempowering beliefs. And in medicine, it can be as powerful as the placebo effect, which you should probably keep in mind the next time that you see your doctor and receive some bad news. And there is a really extreme example of the nocebo effect. In 1974, Dr. Meador had a patient, Sam Lond, who was a retired shoe salesman, and he suffered from the cancer of the esophagus, which was at the time considered 100% fatal. And Lond was treated for the cancer, but everyone in the medical community knew that his esophageal cancer would recur. So it was no surprise when he died a few weeks after the diagnosis. But the surprise came after his death, when an autopsy found very little cancer in his body and certainly not enough to kill him. So there were just a couple of spots in the liver and one in the lung, but there was no trace of the esophageal cancer that everyone thought had killed him. And the doctor told the Discovery Health Channel, who did the reporting on this, he died with cancer, but not from cancer. So the question is, what did Lond die of, if not esophageal cancer? And the doctor, even 3 decades after the patient's death, said, I thought he had cancer, he thought he had cancer, everyone around him thought he had cancer. Did I remove hope in some way? And this case, as well as similar cases, suggest that physicians, parents, and teachers can remove hope by programming you to believe you're powerless. We also have some interesting studies regarding age stereotypes. And research suggests that a positive mindset can even trump some effects of aging. And there's a number of studies, one of them from Yale University and University of California, Berkeley. The researchers decided to study whether it's possible to counteract our culture's undeniably negative view of aging, and in doing so, improve health. So in one of the 4 groups, the participants took part in 15-minute weekly sessions where they unconsciously observed positive words connecting to aging. So words like wise, creative, spry, and fit were connected to words like old and senior. And these words were flashed on a laptop screen so briefly that while the subconscious mind registered them, the participants' slower operating conscious mind couldn't perceive the words. And the follow-up testing showed that this implicit intervention significantly strengthened the perceptions of age. But even more impressive were the physical changes. 1 week and 3 weeks after the final session, the participants were given a physical task. For example, repeatedly standing up from a chair and sitting down, or just walking across a room, holding poses that challenge balance. And the group that experienced the implicit positive messages showed significant improvement in their physical functioning compared to before the experiment began. In fact, they showed greater physical improvement than a group of similar aged adults who exercised for 4 months. Study participants that participated in the explicit intervention that consisted of writing essays about positive, fit, energetic elders showed no improvement. And this is very interesting because it shows us the power of the subconscious mind, because the implicit group was exposed to subliminal messages and they reached the subconscious mind where the negative programming about getting old is present. And the fact that the implicit rather than the explicit group worked emphasizes the fact that the primary source controlling our life experiences is the subconscious mind, and that we need to focus on reprogramming the subconscious mind. And this is a very interesting study in 2007 about weight loss. So researchers told half of the cleaning staff at 7 hotels that they were burning lots of calories in their daily work, enough to satisfy the Surgeon General's recommendations for an active lifestyle, and the other half did not hear the positive news. Now, although the actual behavior did not change, 4 weeks after the intervention, the informed group perceived themselves to be getting significantly more exercise than before. And in fact, those who perceived that they were getting more exercise lost weight and lowered their blood pressure, body fat, waist to hip ratio, and body mass index. Study done in 2007. We have a cool quote by Robert Collier. Our subconscious minds have no sense of humor, play no jokes, and cannot tell the difference between reality and an imagined thought or image. And this is very suitable for the next couple of examples that we will see. We have a team of Harvard researchers that took a group of volunteers who had never before played the piano and divided the group in half. One half practiced a simple 5-finger piano exercise for 2 hours a day over a period of 5 days. And the remaining half did the same thing, but just by imagining that they were sitting at the piano and without physically moving their fingers in any way. The interesting thing is that the before and after brain scans showed that both groups created a dramatic number of new neural circuits and new neurological programming in the region of their brains that controls finger movements, even though one group did so by thought and imagination alone. And the participants that mentally rehearsed the actions had brains that looked like the experience had happened, even though they never lifted a finger. We have a similar example regarding muscle growth. In a study at the Cleveland Clinic, 10 research subjects between the ages of 20 and 35 imagined flexing one of their biceps as hard as they could in 5 training sessions a week for 12 weeks. And every other week, the researchers recorded the subjects' electrical brain activity during the sessions and measured their muscle strength. By the end of the study, the subjects had increased their biceps strength by 13.5%, even though they hadn't actually been using their muscles at all. And they maintained their gains for 3 months after the training sessions stopped. There you go. You just need a little bit of imagination and you will get the gains that you were looking for in over the course of the year. And that also explains, even I believe Arnold Schwarzenegger was talking about this while he was working out. And while he was working on his biceps, he imagined that they were like mountain peaks. So that's a pretty nifty visualization trick right there for the gains. So it's fascinating how we can change the brain as well as the body just by our thoughts and imagination, and the inner world of imagination can appear as real as reality, and your biology changes accordingly. That means that you can make your brain and body look as if the physical experience has already happened without having the actual experience. And you can see why when you wake up in the morning and when you start thinking about the people you have to see and the places you have to go to and the things you have to do in your busy schedule, which is a form of mental rehearsal, and then you also add an emotion to it like suffering or frustration because of your beliefs regarding it, and then you find yourself training your brain and your body to look like that future has already happened. Another interesting study from 1996, where Cole and his collaborators found unbalanced gene expression responses in 209 genes, many of which play roles in the inflammatory immune responses. And they saw that in groups of impoverished children and depressed patients with asthma. And the team discovered that the immune functions in poorer kids had more active inflammatory genes and simultaneously expressed more sluggishness in gene networks that control the inflammation response than well-to-do children. And the health histories of the poor kids also showed more asthma attacks and other health problems. Though poverty seemed to be interfering with the behavior of their immune systems, Cole's team suspected other factors at work. So they showed all the kids films of ambiguous or awkward social situations and asked them how threatening they found them. On average, the poor kids perceived more threat, and the well-off children perceived less. Naturally, some kids in both groups were outliers. A few of the poor kids saw very little menace in the ambiguous situations, and a few well-off kids saw a lot. But when the results of individuals with perceptions of insecurity were separated from the participants' socioeconomic scores and laid over the gene expression scores, the data showed that it was really the kids' perception of their vulnerability, their perception of how scary the world is, not their income levels, that accounted for most of the difference in the immune gene expression. In fact, when controlled for variations in threat perception, poverty's influence almost vanished. 2009 study. So, to recap, believing that you're taking a medicine can actually improve your health, believing that you can't be cured or that your death is a guarantee, reflects in diminished results of the medicine and a deterioration of health. Also, believing that you're burning more calories actually results in fat loss. Just believing that you're practicing a skill or working out your muscles can actually result in muscle gain and new neural connections. And believing that you're in your prime actually makes you physically younger and stronger. Also, believing you're vulnerable and that the world is a scary place actually changes the expression of your genes and compromises your immune response. The natural question is, how is all of this possible? And this is something that we will take a look at in the next chapter, Impact of Beliefs.